Sonic Movie 3 had its fair share of controversies. And look, you can't please everyone. And when you do, it results in a more boring product. So today we're going to take a sweeping look at the great many issues that came up in the promotion cycle and upon the release of Sonic Movie 3. And look, you saw the thumbnail, guns are back. Guns are back. Guns went away for a while, and there's some people that want to keep them out of content, but they're back. And I think Sonic Movie 3 went about firearms perfectly. We didn't necessarily need to see Shadow taking shots at moving targets, but just him epically holding one on his motorcycle was one of a million reasons that you jump up in your seat in the theater at the realization that, yes, Sonic Movie 3 is so much better than Movie 2. And having seen a grand total of 0 guns in the Mario movie, I can only applaud Sega for not getting brushed around in the wind by the storms of current events. Art is art. The human experience is what it is, regardless of the tides of the moment on social media. There are some people out there who think guns are a big deal that should be kept out of PG-rated kids' movies. Sega doesn't stop there. Paramount doesn't stop there. The whole main plot and conflict of this movie is Gerald Robotnik wanting to kill all of humanity and himself. Guns are a simple warm-up. Now, there was very vociferous pushback from Matt Walsh specifically about this total annihilation plotline. And Matt Walsh was probably waltzing into the theater holding his rosary and counting up the beads, so it's no surprise that he could not vibe with the edgy, jarring plot points that are integral to the Sonic series. It's safe to say Matt Walsh has not played Sonic Adventure 2. Matt Walsh really hated the movie, and he criticized the crowd that he saw surrounding him in the theater because to him, it was inconceivable that there would be entire groups of adults that would come see the movie and be hyped about it and pump their fists in the air with excitement at this or that hedgehog changing a different color at the end. And he kind of likens those adult Sonic fans who are still just as excited, if not more excited for the movies than the kids. He likens those groups to Disney fans, stuck in a state of stunted adolescence that they go to Disney World without any kids in the equation and interact with the park in the same way that they would have when they were 9, just with a more deluxe adult vocabulary, but same mechanics. So I'm here to say that I do not believe in guilty pleasures. Anything I like unapologetically, and that includes the song Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus. I feel no guilt of my enjoyment of that song. Okay, but for all the Jim Carrey and Keanu Reeves and Miles Teller Prower in this movie, despite all that, Sonic Movie 3, infamously or famously, was not nominated for the Best Picture Oscar. And I think at this point, the jury's still out as to why Sonic Movie 3 was not nominated. Some people think that it may have been ineligible for Best Picture because it didn't tick enough boxes on the racial spreadsheet where you have to have a certain diversity quotient in order to even be eligible for Best Picture, which I assume the Oscars sends out a spreadsheet to all the studios where they just enter the quantity and races of everyone on staff, and then the spreadsheet calculates it with an overall thumbs up or thumbs down if they've met the required prescribed mandatory standards. As quick as people want to get blaming DEI and wokeness for keeping Sonic Movie 3 on the sidelines from the Best Picture discussion, guys, it could just be as simple as that Paramount did not submit this particular feature film for consideration for Best Picture. Now, Matt Walsh was not the only person to file a grievance with this movie. I'm sure you guys all saw the thing with Grace Randolph showing up in your Twitter feed too. Grace Randolph took a quick glimpse at the Shadow and Maria dynamic and objected on the basis that it was some kind of grooming and that Shadow is some kind of adult hedgehog that shouldn't be cultivating and maintaining a platonic friendship with a girl of Maria's young age. And look, I could sentence Grace Randolph to atone for her nonsense, but I kind of feel like the way Sega properties are with their identity and what they contribute that Mario doesn't is that this is almost an intended outcome. It's not like Sega deliberately created the plotline to make the Grace Randolph grandmas of the world feel off-put and clutch their pearls. But it's just an example that Sonic games and stories are bizarre. They're over the top, You sit there and play Sonic Frontiers, and half the time you're like, what am I even looking at? This is so wild, I love it. And so the squares of society are naturally going to push back at the movie. They're going to take a quick glimpse at it and object because it doesn't align with their worldview. That's what a Sega property is. Ignoring the boring square adults, doing wild things, wild colors, and Knuckles Chaotix and Sonic CD. Grace Randolph could never enjoy Knuckles Chaotix because it's not for her. Grace Randolph can instead default to the safe, sterile new Super Mario games that sold by the tens of millions on the Nintendo Wii 1. But even if the random squares and people out of touch doing their movie reviewers can't make sense of this film, well, longtime Sonic fans had a whole lot of hype for this, and of course part of that hype extends to the post-credits scene. And I gotta say, my backlash contributed to the controversy surrounding Sonic Movie 3's post-credits scene, which, this is your final and only first spoiler warning, those characters specifically being brought into the cinematic universe here, I think is fantastic. Metal and Amy. It did not even occur to me in the moment that, holy smokes, Batman, Amy and Metal Sonic? So this next movie is going to be an adaptation of Sonic CD? Look, I highly doubt they're going to use Sonic CD's minimal plot as the basis for the movie, but you cannot deny that both of those characters literally originated from Sonic the Hedgehog compact disc, CD. So don't get me wrong, Amy entering the movies is fantastic, but some people found the post-credits reveal for Amy to be underwhelming because it wasn't really anything other than, hey, look, it's Amy. And she didn't say anything. She had no dialogue. She just had a quick smile. And I'm sitting there in the theater being like, oh, what's she gonna say? And then it cuts to black. Yeah, I think the fact that Tails said something at the end of the first movie sort of served up an expectation that we would get at least some nugget. Now, many of you will be quick to say, well, hey, hold on. At the end of movie 2, we had the Shadow reveal in the post-credits. Shadow didn't say any dialogue, so how could anyone object to Amy not saying anything? Well, the two situations are not quite the same, because although Shadow did not say any words aloud, we did nonetheless get a lot of exposition from that soldier on the site where the Death Egg robot fight happened. In the aftermath of that, the soldier provided a lot of exposition, which clearly telegraphs to fans like, okay, Gerald Robotnik, 50 years ago, Shadow, he's waking up, right? This is a post-credits reveal that's giving a whole lot of tangible info about where the story is going in the next movie with this new character. And so to see Shadow wake up, that in itself is plenty. But I'm sitting here after having seen Sonic Movie 3, and I'm thinking to myself, I have absolutely no idea what Amy's involvement in Sonic Movie 4 will even be. So that's why it sort of feels like a step down to some. I don't understand how anyone watching the movie could connect the dots and say, wow, we have an entire army of Metal Sonics, but Amy's gonna make it all okay because Hammer. I don't know that the Hammer is established in lore in a way that it could save the day to an army of Metal Sonics, in a way that Sonic's typical light speed travel abilities, as established in the first movie and not utilized in the bar scene in the second movie, could have dispatched those Metal Sonic robots easily. And about those Metal Sonic robots, it's a whole army of them, and some are concerned that making there be more than one Metal just sort of cheapens the whole idea of Metal Sonic, is that now any one Metal Sonic is insignificant. It sort of undercuts previous lore in-game, where the entire showdown of Sonic CD is Sonic versus Metal. Metal in himself is a formidable opponent. And the other thing that's got investors a little bit uneasy is that CGI is not cheap. Anyone who's watched the Knuckles series, which is informally known as Wade and Knuckles, knows that the expensiveness of animating a CGI Knuckles is half the reason why the series called Knuckles doesn't have much Knuckles in it. So if we're now talking about an entire army of dozens of Metals, well, that's not going to come cheap, and the justified concern is that the amount of metal in the movie will be brief and fleeting, so as to save cash. Time will tell, though. You're just gonna have to get all your Metal Sonic enjoyment in the final scene when the army comes, like the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. Okay, so the next controversy to touch upon is involving the song Live and Learn from, of course, Sonic Adventure 2. Now, there's two separate controversies that happened, and the first was early on in the hype promotion cycle for the film, where Sonic vocalist Bentley Jones, who has in his resume Sonic 06 and Sonic and the Black Knight, he sent out a tweet that was him standing at a microphone recording vocals, and he tagged it as Sonic Movie 3, and since people had known by that point that Live and Learn was going to be in the movie, it seemed to possibly be hyping up the idea that he would be singing the song in the movie. So listen, I, Alex Yard, have a confession to make. I had a media literacy slip-up regarding Live and Learn to be appearing in the Sonic Movie 3, because after looking at Bentley Jones's teasing tweet and then seeing the Sonic Stadium cover it as a potential possibility, I somehow got it in my head that, yeah, Bentley Jones is going to be singing Live and Learn in the new movie. I think I said that at least once on my live streams, and that was totally wrong. Thank God I found out about this in time, because I very nearly almost said in the Shadow the Hedgehog music theory video that come this Christmas we'll rock out to Bentley Jones singing Live and Learn. Whew, bullet dodged. We found out for sure that Bentley's vocals would not appear in the movie, because Bentley eventually released a statement saying that, alright guys, here's my cover of Live and Learn, now that it's quote-unquote no longer associated with any official Sega projects, I can show it to you. So, who knows how much truth there is to that? Was it potentially on the table to be somehow connected to the movie or the soundtrack surrounding it, whether or not it was in the film or not? Who knows if that's all a delusion on Bentley Jones's end? But it does seem like Johnny Gioeli also didn't quite know exactly how the song would be used. I mean, Paramount reached out to him to secure the rights and everything, but for a while, he did not even know exactly how the movie would be manifest. It's clear in retrospect that the deal was not just to use the official recording of the song, but Paramount was at liberty to do new arrangements of it, like they amazingly did in that opening sequence, seeing the acoustic finger-picking version, which you later find out is by Maria. Dude, absolutely amazing. That was one of a few moments where I'm like, yep, this is confirmed canonically a good movie. And wouldn't it be nice if there was only one controversy surrounding the song Live and Learn? However, mere days before the movie premiered on December 21, news broke that Johnny Gioeli had filed a lawsuit against Sega for unauthorized use of the song Live and Learn in many other games beyond the original game it was created for, Sonic Adventure 2. Now, apparently, just about all of the music that Crush 40, Johnny, and Jun Tsunoi have done for Sonic games is mostly all covered under a contract where it's like, okay, you're hired to do this job. Once you create the song, Sega owns it in perpetuity. They can continue using it in future games. They have all the rights to it, which seems to be like some version of the deal that Nintendo has, because Nintendo is free to just turn around and use the DK rap in the Mario movie without crediting Grant Kirkhope. Hashtag never forget Grant Kirkhope composed the DK rap. And whatever that Donkey Kong song was in the Mario movie also went uncredited to David Wise. Now, Nintendo is within their rights to do that per the contractual arrangement they had when they had David Wise or Grant Kirkhope do the music for the movie. But look, a great many people, myself included, would vastly prefer that those composers be credited in the film, even if it's not contractually required on Nintendo's end. Okay, so Johnny Gioeli's lawsuit says that when they went about making the song Live and Learn and drawing up the contract, that one did not have the contractual arrangement where Sega just owns it in perpetuity. And so specifically, Johnny asserts that he has always maintained the rights to the composition. And further evidence of that is the fact that when Paramount decided they wanted to use Live and Learn in the movie possibly, well, they must have looked up the composer credits in the official database, found Johnny Gioeli's name, and sent him a ping on Discord to obtain the rights using all the official channels. And so at some point between the Paramount deal with Johnny and in the lead up to the movie, what Johnny has said is that a fan brought to his attention at least one other game, whether it was Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, Smash Brothers, whatever it was, a fan brought this to the attention of Johnny, who then did a double take and was like, hey, I own the rights to that song. Sega's not supposed to be using this without permission and compensation. And so Johnny has filed the suit to A, establish for sure that he is the owner of Live and Learn, learn, and if so, that he's entitled to retroactive compensation to the tune of half a rock. $500,000, people. That's a lot of cash. I can only imagine what that translates to in yen. And so look, when this lawsuit news dropped right before the movie came out, I just kind of touched base with my community and was like, enjoy the movie, don't fret about the lawsuit, don't let that be a rain cloud hanging over your experience of the movie. And my advice worked because everyone enjoyed the movie, and whatever Johnny or Sega is entitled to will be sorted out in time. It's baffling that the song could be used in more than a dozen games, and somehow this would never enter Johnny's awareness whatsoever, but that is what he has said, and we shall see. Which brings us to our next controversy surrounding Sonic Cinematic Universe newcomer Kristen Ritter. Now, if you ask Kristen Ritter in an interview why is she in the Sonic movie, she will say, I don't know, they asked me. She had no interest or awareness or relevance to the Sonic series until she got a call with an offer. Want to be in the movie? She said, okay, I'm looking for work, sure. Now, having seen the movie, you look at Kristen Ritter's character and you're like, what was the point of that? She was just kind of a generic soldier interacting with the characters in the military scenes, but she didn't have much of a distinctive character or even a role to play in the plot. In fact, when you look at what specific beats of the movie even involved Kristen Ritter, well, that's going to include a joke about women in the military, and also the fact that Kristen Ritter is hot, because when Maddie transforms into Kristen Ritter's appearance, Tom likes what he sees, which is upsetting to Maddie Wachowski. So look, I'm not Grace Randolph clutching my pearls being upset that there's these offhanded jokes about women in the military, but it's like, if you're going to go there, if you're going to be edgy, if you're going to push that boundary and say something provocative, make it funny and memorable. A woman in the military? I just... If the era of overcautious wokeness is winding down, sure, it's great to be able to stretch our wings again, but when you do simple, straightforward, shallow jokes like that, it sort of undercuts the mandate to push those comical boundaries. It's like, if you're going to push those boundaries, at least it's preferable that you have some message to say, some point, some critique or satire, but instead it's just like, hey, John McCain is still not sure whether women should even be in the military. He wants there to be more studies conducted before we just jump into it. Now, I'm recording this live in the studio, and I have an audience on the other side of the plexiglass, and I can see their chats. Eblo says, Kristen Ritter's character was a high-ranking soldier who was easily fooled by hologram technology in a scenario where there are multiple known characters that are sci-fi technology experts. And so here again, it's like, well, it's great that we're bringing in more women representation into the movie. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, it's a good thing. And if anything, it can start to make up a little bit for the weak sauce female representation in movie 2. One of my worst movie-going experiences in my entire life was to boot up the title screen of Sonic Movie 2 the day it released on April 8, 2022, and we're in a boring suburban house, and Maddie enters holding a laundry basket. I lost some of my innocence that day. It was a before and after arc, and so you look at Kristen Ritter coming in, and it's like, oh, all right, we'll put her in a military role. Maybe we can have a female character whose contributions are not just being Tom's wife, doing laundry. And then you get the Kristen Ritter is hot joke, Kristen Ritter's in the military, and then Kristen Ritter getting very easily duped as a pushover by a hologram con that she really should have seen coming. She should not have so willingly issued that confidential information and access code, the key code. She got fooled by a hologram of someone who was supposed to be dead. And so creating these female characters, bringing them in, but making them these pushovers who are easily walked over, it's not giving Lena Dunham any additional confidence in this film series. And so paired alongside all of these unfortunate, not that creative or insightful women jokes, then you got Eggman at the beginning of the movie talking about the dreaded fate of growing man boobs due to sitting around and eating too much food. And it's like, as a viewer, it's not that I'm offended by that, but again, if we're putting this in a kid's movie, there ought to be good payoff. But this just seems a little bit immature, that one of those screenwriters could not resist making an offhanded remark to man breasts. Don't get me wrong, it's based that they would put these things in the movie. But if you're going to approach things that way, it's going to be harder for me and others to defend it if it's not creative, memorable, or new. I thought it would mainly be Peter Griffin talking about boobs, not Jim Carrey. You misused Jim enough in movie 2. Don't have him sitting there eating Cheetos, man, talking about his man curves. And to point out another controversy of that opening scene is that it was cool that it was set in the epic military facility with all the nice lights, but you find out that that scene itself dodged a bullet because an earlier draft of the script was not set on an epic military base. It was set out in Mexico, like somewhere near the Gulf of America, and it was in a boring, hot, dry, desolate place where Eggman was in hiding following the events of movie 2. It is so concerning that that was even on the table. Thank God it got cut, because I just think back to movie 2 where, again, very early on in movie 2's runtime, I was severely concerned because I'm like, why are we having Eggman alone monologuing on the mushroom planet with no other characters, no chemistry? Look, we could talk about the pandemic and how that affected movie 2, and we certainly will in a dedicated video on the topic of said major motion picture film. However, just the fact that the boring Mexico isolation scene was on the table is an indication that the screenwriting team behind the cinematic universe needs to make it a point to attend more writing webinars. Or just ask around, ask your pals. They can give you clues about how to start a movie in medias res in a way that will not even risk having a boring monologue. So it's funny to mention the lockdown stay-at-home as a limited issue that hindered movie 2, and then you turn around and Sonic movie 3 has its own issue, not a global lockdown stay-at-home, but rather something even more sinister and devastating and earth-shattering, which is, of course, the Hollywood strike. Hollywood was brought to a standstill. So what did the Paramount Sonic movie team do with this? Did they stand in solidarity with their peers in the industry demanding the conditions that they knew they deserved? No, they just up and packed up and went to London to shoot there instead because they could get around the rules by filming and operating in the United Kingdom, where King Charles is. And so I'm sitting here in the hype cycle for this movie thinking, alright, movie 2 was the pandemic movie, movie 3 is the strike movie. When am I gonna just get a regular Sonic movie? Now you look at the finished product of Sonic movie 3, and it doesn't really feel like the Hollywood strike had any big effect on what the total sum of the movie felt like. But do you think that will stop the writers from inserting a disappointing tongue-in-cheek fourth wall break where Tom all but looks at the camera and says, well, I guess we're going to London because the strike won't allow us to contractually operate in the United States of Obama. So I'm never a fan of those immersion-breaking fourth wall breaks. I didn't particularly like the second movie when Eggman was chomping on his popcorn, and I definitely didn't like the movie 3 moment where Eggman and Gerald are having their amazing reunion and he all but acknowledges, yeah, I feel so connected to you in kinship. It's like we're the same actor playing 2 characters in a movie. I checked my phone when that line was delivered. I'm just kidding. I would never do that. But I was displeased. So it's not that I needed the movie to be this super serious, play it straight, as serious and grim as Sonic Forces type of experience. However, there were plenty of people in the lead up to this movie worried that it was going to be too silly. They knew that the plot points would be adapting significant elements of Sonic Adventure 2, and then when they released that promotional music video, gave a preview of the dance scene with Gerald and Eggman, which I wasn't going to look at that music video because I wanted to be freshly amazed and wowed by the hexagon laser dance sequence in movie 3, and it was very memorable. It washed off a lot of the stink from the horrible Bruno Mars dance sequence in the second film. So people looked at that dance sequence preview and they were worried that no, they need to take it more seriously because somehow, even after the wedding scene in movie 2, people still thought it was a reasonable expectation to just get a purely straightforward Sonic Adventure 2 the movie. But those angry fans were not the only party displeased with the momentum of movie 3. There's also Disney. Battle at the box office of Sonic 3 versus Lion King 9, which I think had the subtitle Mufasa the Hedgehog. And so it is said that in the debut weekend, Sonic Movie 3 took the crown, because both movies were projected to get about 50 million, but then the way it shook out was that the Sonic movie got 65 to Mufasa's 35. So that's totally hilarious, because that does seem to be the Sonic movie taking a direct market share away from Disney and the Mouseketeers. They literally took a bigger slice of the limited pie on offer. And so then Disney took action to kind of use their muscle to claw back to the top of the charts. So who knows how much Disney would or wouldn't have pressed for Mufasa to take up more theaters and also to take up showtimes on premium screen theaters, whether it's IMAX or whatever else. Now, would that mean that in some theaters, Sonic Movie 3 was available on IMAX? Because if so, I got ripped off. I clearly live in the wrong city. And so eventually Mufasa did take the global box office crown, but that's not super surprising because Sonic, despite coming from Japan, is not popular in Japan. So Mufasa had a massive leg up in the Japanese market. And that's despite the fact that in Japan, Sonic Movie 3 is called Sonic Cross Shadow Tokyo Mission. So we're just about done with this extensive chronicle of every last controversy, big or small, surrounding this fantastic major motion picture, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And by now you've kind of figured out that throughout this video, we have applied the spawn wave media definition of the word controversy, which is to say that at least one person pushed back, objected, or didn't like it. But this final controversy is perhaps the one that the most people can agree on, that this was a problem. No one thought it was a good bang for their buck. $6 for a level pack, quote-unquote level pack, and it has one level? Are they calling it a pack because it has the main level you run through, and then it has those sub-missions, which are set in a specific pocket of the level, and maybe they arrange some of the architecture differently for a different gameplay, but it's still the same environment, same mechanics and narrative and vibe. You start to wonder if that was just a $6 tax to afford Keanu Reeves $6 Obama dollars, guys, for one level, knowing that that'll probably go down to $2 on some Black Friday extravaganza. As much as I'd love to hear Neo from the Matrix's voice while running through the Tokyo environments, I think the consensus is clear enough that the DLC movie level pack, in the words of Reggie Fils-Aimé, did not deliver. So yeah, that's pretty much everything as far as a sentencing. Out of all those quote-unquote controversies, whose backlash is the most unreasonable, or which problem with the movie is the most, unforgivable? I don't want to sentence Matt Walsh or Grace Randolph, because they are lost causes, and it is the natural order of things for them to vocally express their displeasure over the film. I don't want to sentence Disney. There's no point. They won't learn. So when it comes as to who to sentence, and so you can let me know in the comments which controversy deserves a concrete sentencing. For me, the person who deserves a sentencing the most to atone for what they have done, well, that would be Paramount on account of the disappointing female representation in movie 3, which is especially inexcusable given the even worse female representation in movie 2. So Paramount, I sentence you to taking significant, meaningful steps to ensure that movie 4 doesn't have any of these unforced errors. Cheapening women to just boiling them down to their womanhood. Haha, Kristen Ritter's hot. Kristen Ritter's in the military. You're gonna have to do better in movie 4 because this is Amy's time to shine. Honestly, my gut is that they're going to do Amy justice, but if they mess this up, and look, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a Sonic Movie 5. I have heard from Speed Supersonics reporting that although Sonic Movie 3 did decently good, it didn't do wicked good. So it's just not the massive cash cow that it could be. It didn't even beat Mufasa. So you do have to think about the global box office. The stage is set. Sonic Movie 4 could be a fantastic vehicle for Amy, Kristen Ritter, and finally Maddie. Let's put Maddie to much better use. She's a veterinarian, guys, and the movies seem to have forgotten this completely. You're telling me you can't utilize that as a plot point as directly pertaining to numerous fluffy, colorful talking animals? Come on, people. Paramount just needs to send their staff to a few more writing webinars, and Sonic Movie 4 is going to be a hit. So listen, you can't please everyone. Controversies like these are going to happen. All we can do is say our piece, persuade the community, and help move the needle in a better direction. So I look forward to no cringe, lazy oversimplification of women content in the next film, but at least we'll get to hear Amy say things. So yeah, if your local movie theater is taking pre-orders for tickets to go see Sonic Movie 4, get on that. My hype train is certainly in full steam. And so with that, Good night, this has been Alex Yard here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone. Thank you for listening. Let me know if there were any controversies that I missed, or controversies that you feel shouldn't have even been in the discussion. YouTube is the perfect avenue for said low-stakes sparring. Take care, everybody. Play hedgehog games. And cut. The Controversies. Explain.